Greetings to all of you, dear guests. It's our fourth side event at the 24th session of Human Rights Council about Iranian refugees outside the country. Videos are registered and photographs are taken. Please let us know if you don't want your picture to be taken. Ms. Tania Khaliji, human rights activist, will speak about refugees in Germany. She's our first speaker. She will talk about who is a refugee, asylum seeker. Greetings. I have to start by thanking you for having given me this opportunity to speak about Iran and immigration, and in particular asylum seekers' problems who have very complex issues and problems. I speak of a mutual concern both for human rights activists and government officials. Because all the immigrants need support from host countries until he or she can support himself. This needs special programs and budgetary funds. I start by saying exile, immigration, and asylum is not something that anyone wishes. This is imposed on people in some lands. This is not the result of idealism. There is only one reason for this: saving one's life, survival. All living beings on earth intuitively and rationally are seeking survival. I am a human being, first of all. I'm a woman. A woman born in Iran. A place that was in older times a happy country with deep poetic and artistic traditions and cultures, but today is full of endless pain. Throughout history, Iran has gone through many changes and has gone through political instability. Iranian history shows many of these changes and instabilities. What happened after the 1979 revolution in Iran was a very deep and considerable change, social change. It's not possible to throw away all that has existed and think only of the future. All those who have been victims or not, but I have compassion for their compatriots, are suffering because of all these problems and ask themselves, what's the solution? So the quest for solutions can open the way for struggle, and this struggle might end in exile. Many of the children who were born in 1980s during the Iran-Iraq war and who spent her youth during the sanctions has ended up in exile today. These persons are not armed opponents, and they want to put disorder anywhere. They just want to live free and free of repression and inequality. We are the generation of 1980s. The war and sanctions and political repression, chain murders, repression of students, universities. repression of women's rights activists and children's rights activists, and the movement in 2009. They are all of these are events of our past. All Iranian asylum seekers were preferring to stay as far as possible, stay in the country. But there was a moment they had to choose between survival or death. I attract your attention to the reports by Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch on Iran in 2013. In the Amnesty International report in 2012, the expectation of the life expectancy was considered 73 years. In 2012, at least 360 persons were executed in Iran. At least 3 youths of 18 years old and 1 boy of 17 years old, Alireza Molazadeh, was executed in Karaj. At least 15 prisoners were on death row, and they are expecting to be executed by stoning. According to Human Rights Watch, in 2011, more than 600 persons were executed. Iran had the biggest number of executions after China. And 30 persons were executed for war against God in 2010. And 18 Arab men in Karun prison in Ahvaz were executed, and one of them was a boy. 28 Kurdish prisoners are expecting their death sentence to be executed. These are only parts of what's going on in Iran. Instability in Middle East and Southwestern Asia creates in itself a stressful environment for Iranian society. And the government does not reduce this pressure on the activists and social activists and civil activists. At least 5,000 persons left the country in 2009. The first option was going to the neighboring countries like Iran and Turkey. In Turkey, the process of asylum seeking is very complex, and many problems exist. There was one of these asylum seekers was murdered, and another one committed suicide. The pressures of Islamic Republic, execution, stoning, death under torture, sacking from universities, and pressure on the families of activists is going upwards every day. So what can someone who has no rights and no freedom do? They should stay or they can leave. The policies that result in war and social instability are adopted in spite of the opinions of the social opinions. In Iran, for human rights activists, there is no other option but prison, exile, and isolation. I'm happy. I thank you for listening to me. I ask you to support us in these very difficult days and try to help Iranian asylum seekers to seek their elementary rights, which is life in a free society and benefiting from human rights. As Bertolt Brecht said, we are poor refugees. I hope there will be a world without war and discrimination.